Amidst the throne's uncertain fading gleam, a woman's right by solemn pact was sworn, but Europe's powers awoke a troubled dream. That line really sets the stage, doesn't it? It's talking about one of the most sprawling, chaotic conflicts of the 18th century.
So how in the world do you even begin to wrap your head around a war that dragged in basically every major power in Europe? Well, we're going to tackle it in a really unique way. We're going to look at it through the lens of a war game.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with why the war even happened, this whole war for an empress thing. Then we'll check out what everyone wanted to get out of it, dive into the rules of combat, see how diplomacy works with the roll of the dice, look at some crazy wild cards, and finally, figure out how you actually win at history.
All right, let's dive right in. Section 1. A war for an empress. The whole thing, this massive European firestorm, all kicks off because of a succession crisis. And at the absolute heart of it all is this woman, Maria Theresa of Austria. See, her father, the Holy Roman Emperor, he died without a son. He'd spent years getting everyone to agree that she could inherit his massive empire. But you know how it goes. The second he was gone, all those promises went out the window and the other powers basically saw their chance to pounce.
And this is the piece of paper that was supposed to stop the whole war from ever happening. It's called the Pragmatic Sanction. It was this big legal decree, this international agreement, meant to guarantee Maria Theresa's right to rule. But yeah, as soon as her father died, it turned out that paper was pretty much worthless.
Okay, so that's the why. Now let's get into the who. Section 2. The great powers' objectives. What did every nation actually want to get out of all this chaos?
And just look at this. This shows you right away this was not a simple two-sided fight. Oh no. You've got Prussia, who just wants to grab some land, specifically Silesia. France's main goal is to weaken its old rival, Austria. Meanwhile, Bavaria and Saxony, they're aiming for the big prize, the imperial throne itself. It's this incredibly messy web of competing ambitions, not some clean, straightforward war.
So how does a game even begin to model all that fighting? Well, that brings us to our third section, the battlefield rules of engagement. And you'll see, it simulates 18th century combat with some surprisingly simple rules.
The core combat mechanic is actually super straightforward. Step 1, the attacker moves their armies into an area. Step 2, each side rolls one die for every army they have there. If you roll a 5 or a 6, boom, you remove an enemy army. And here's the key part, Step 4, the attacker wins all ties. That's huge, because it means being aggressive is always rewarded.
But there's a little something extra, a real game changer. Just one simple bonus that can completely tip the scales in any given battle.
And here it is, the Frederick the Great effect. This is all about modeling the impact of brilliant leadership. The Prussian player gets this special counter for their king. And get this, he can move twice as far as a normal army. He adds a +1 to a combat roll, which is huge, and he can't even be captured or killed. He is, without a doubt, a massive advantage for the Prussian player.
All right, that's combat. But what about the politics? Let's talk about diplomacy, because the game uses a single dice roll to capture just how fluid and unpredictable alliances were back then. So you're probably thinking, okay, so those alliances we saw earlier, are those teams just locked in for the entire war?
Nope, not even close. Every single year, the Austrian player gets to make what's called a diplomacy roll. And believe me, a single roll of this die can change, well, pretty much everything.
And the effect is just massive. If Austria gets a successful roll, look what happens. Bavaria and Saxony completely flip sides. One minute, they're allied with Prussia, trying to depose Maria Theresa. The next, they've totally abandoned that goal and are now allied with Austria to protect their own borders. A complete reversal of fortune, all based on one lucky or unlucky roll of the dice.
But you know, the chaos doesn't stop with just shifting alliances. Let's talk about the wild cards. Things like rebellions and surprise reinforcements. These are random events that can pop up and just completely torpedo a player's brilliant strategy.
And probably the most dramatic wildcard of all is the Bonnie Prince Charlie invasion. You know, the Jacobite Rebellion. Now, this isn't something that's guaranteed to happen. It's a what-if scenario that only gets triggered if certain other things happen in the game.
So the big question becomes, will this famous, almost successful historical uprising actually happen in your game?
Well, it's a two-step risk. First, there's a trigger. If Great Britain gets a really good roll for their reinforcements, it's a sign that they're stretching their resources thin. That's when the French player can seize the opportunity. They get to roll a die, and if they get a 4, 5, or 6, the invasion is on.
Bonnie Prince Charlie and his forces successfully land in Scotland.
Okay, but landing is one thing. Taking the crown is another. So, if the invasion succeeds, does he actually become king?
This is where it gets really crazy. On a final die roll, if France rolls a 6, it's over. Just like that. Great Britain is completely out of the war. A major world power, just gone. All based on a single 1 in 6 chance. Talk about high stakes.
Which brings us, finally, to the end goal. How do you win at history? Well, in this game, victory isn't about total conquest, painting the map your color. It's all about achieving the unique, specific objectives your nation had from the very beginning.
And that really leaves us with a final, fascinating question to chew on, right? Can a handful of simple rules and a few dice rolls really capture the sheer chaos of a continent at war? Or, and this is the interesting part, does it maybe just reveal the brutal, chance-driven logic that was hiding underneath it all along?